But I think as tenure assessments go, it's a really useful and I think probably a really well-regarded tool amongst people who use it, both in our district and anybody else out there.
Yeah, it seems like it's much more focused on making the employee a better teacher than it is passing judgment on their performance. Which
Yeah,
is
what what Sonia was saying about her starting, we actually use that as part of an interview process as well. And so in a job interview, we might say, this is the way we determine whether or not after 4 years you receive tenure. Please, let's look it over, and then let's see where you think you stand. And so we use it as sort of a question, but also as a statement. It's a question for them. It helps them sort of hone in on very specific aspects of their professional ability. But it's also, I think, a statement to them about what our expectations are for teachers in our district. That we have high expectations, and I can tell you, I think it's been really effective. We did. I mean, I've been here since we developed that while I was here. So before that, I just don't think we were as solid in terms of tenure development as we are now, and I'm just really happy with how it's gone.
So you'll be staying on then for that process? You'll be staying on then?
Any other discussion? If not, go to the cause. Have we?
No, there are no emails.
No emails. Okay, thank you. Reports to the board. Superintendent report.
Okay, so I do have a few things to talk about in my superintendent's report today. The first one I want to talk about involves next Friday. So on March 12th, on March 11th, we have probably 36 or so members of our faculty or staff who will be getting their second dose of the Moderna vaccine. It was part of a vaccine clinic that was put together at the hospital. And we had, as I said, a large number of people attend. What we've been learning, and maybe you have been learning as well, is that there are some pretty significant side effects of the second dose of the Moderna vaccine. So we have talked long and hard about our worries about the next administrative team. I am planning on utilizing our second required snow day on that day. Now, typically we'll save this day for, say, May, sometime in May. In other words, if we don't use the first 2 snow days, we are obligated to use it for another day off somewhere down the road. When we look at that day and we recognize that we'll be shorthanded in the classroom, teachers, teaching assistants, cafeteria, bus drivers, and we're not even sure who else, perhaps, or possibly for other reasons. We want to practice some prevention here. And so crossing our fingers that we won't be needing any more snow days. In fact, we do have 2 additional snow days that we can use. So we're really not hurting ourselves here. My plan right now is to make that official later on this week. And I would welcome any feedback or questions from any board members on that particular decision.
I think it's a great idea, Roger, because if you have that many going in on Thursday, the 11th for shots, who's going to take the phone calls on Friday morning at 6 a.m. when all of those people can't come into work? So I think the benefit that you're getting from all of those teachers being vaccinated outweighs that Friday is a snow day.
Yeah, and that's of course our where we know that not everybody has a significant reaction to the vaccine, but we also know that many do,
Right.
and we also we can't begin to guess what that will be like. And from some of our experiences with COVID so far that staff shortages have been our number one problem this year. So we don't want that to happen on that day. So that's the plan for that. Somebody called it D-Day. I don't know. I guess that's okay. We call it V-Day maybe for vaccine. I'm not sure, but that's the plan right now. And unless anything new transpires between now and then, I was certainly paying attention to Monday's weather forecast and to see whether or not we were going to need to have some kind of disruption there. But it does look like our best choice is going to be to make that our second of 2 obligatory snow days of the year, with still 2 more remaining as possibilities if we do need to use snow days for weather-related reasons. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, just shifting back to the budget, and Dana and I wanted to remind everybody, we did put a new slide in your PowerPoint presentation last week when we talked about the budget, and this was because again we're recognizing that our budget is very much a maintenance budget. It's very much a status quo budget, but that the circumstances do provide some options. And we talked about that fund balance, and we also recognize that this year has been one of those years that just changes so much. So if you remember, this was a slide that we called New Ideas, and at the budget workshop, we invited you to suggest any budget related items that you might like to see in next year's budget. For example, do we provide additional support for school lunches? We talked about that a little bit. Or do ideas that are coming out of the DEI committee, that's the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, have costs associated that we should be budgeting for? So, those are 2 examples, and there certainly are other possibilities. So we just want to remind you and encourage you to send Dana or me any of your ideas for the second draft budget, which is coming, I believe, is that 2 weeks, Dana? Is that our second draft budget, right? So as we're developing that second draft, and if you want us to pursue some of those ideas, we are happy to do that. We would, of course, look at costs associated and see how it would impact the budget, what kind of revenue would be required and where it would come from, all those kinds of pieces that we could work on. So that was number 2, the budget New Ideas reminder in anticipation of the next budget workshop. Third, I want to talk about the schools, right? That's the best part, isn't it? So in school news, let me share with you some things. First of all, since our last meeting, Winter Carnival has come and gone, and that we had a unique Winter Carnival this year, but we had a Winter Carnival. And we're really grateful that Rick was able to be there for the opening ceremonies. It was obviously a scaled down opening ceremonies. We did not have a opening and closing, just one ceremony in person. You can watch all of this, of course, on video. It's all posted on our YouTube channel and all those places. Karen posts them all on Facebook, so you can always watch this. But here's how some of the things turned out, because I know people are really interested, right? So first, the King and the Queen. That was Andrew Stanton. These are seniors, Andrew Stanton and Dylan Bayshaw. Second, who won, right? Who won this year? So the overall class competition, which is always a friendly competition, maybe gets a little bit emotional, but part of Winter Carnival is bringing us all together. I'm just setting you up. I want you to be anticipating these here. So to bring us all together, and so the competition has to be friendly. So in the end, we feel like we're a tighter school rather than 4 competing groups. So anyway, the winner was not the seniors this year; it was the juniors, and and the juniors were able to pull off a victory. So congratulations to the juniors. But the Sportsmanship Award, yes, I know. The Sportsmanship Award this year went to the freshmen. So the freshmen were first place for sportsmanship, but, and here's the best part, it was very, very close amongst all four grade levels. So we had a good year for sportsmanship. Snow sculptures, the freshmen won that again. So good news for the freshmen. They're getting ready for the future. You can see it. And then finally, the lip dub. And you can watch those lip dubs. They're all posted out there. Maybe you've been watching a few different ones. The lip dub was a tie for first place between the juniors and the seniors. And I thought that was a great outcome. So congratulations to all the classes for a great winter carnival. And also many thanks to our winter carnival committee. There are so many members of our faculty and staff that get together on a regular basis to plan. And this year it was, starting from scratch and being very creative about what to do. So many thanks to our Winter Carnival Committee for organizing such a special event that was also COVID friendly. So that is the middle high school Winter Carnival. But the elementary school is gearing up, and I think I mentioned this at our last meeting, for a big month. This is Read Across America Month, and they are also planning a special March day called Bomber Day. So Bomber Day, I'll start with Bomber Day. So Bomber Day at Lake Placid Elementary School, this is new. This is an afternoon or afternoons of outside activities that are organized by the faculty and staff. Now they're fun activities, but they're also connected to educational and academic topics. And so teachers develop these and organize them so that there's learning involved as well as fun. They're also, of course, weather-dependent activities. And so they can include things that involve sledding, that include snowmen, like there's a frozen art project. There's a science-related project involving building a nest. There's just lots of other possibilities. So they're still organizing that as we speak. The teachers are putting together different activities, but that should be fun. Bomber Day is scheduled for sometime next week. So that's one activity at the elementary school. Also, Read Across America. So I believe that's one of our resolutions tonight, is the Read Across America proclamation. But this is Read Across America Month, and at the elementary school, they really celebrate this. So what does that mean? That means that they're going to enjoy many activities that are centered around books and reading, including special Fridays. One of those may have to move to a special Thursday if we don't have school on that Friday, but that will be fine, I'm sure. So here's the kind of thing they have to look forward to. Friday, March 5th, that's this Friday, they have Wear Something to Read Day. I guess the kids get to figure out what that means, wearing something to read. On Friday, March 12th, or maybe that'll be shifted to the 11th, right? LP Pride Bomber Day. So they're supposed to wear blue and gold or other Lake Placid gear in honor of reading. On Friday, March 19th, there's Fun Hair and Hat Day. And Friday, March 26th, Pajama Day and Drop Everything and Read Day. So in Drop Everything and Read Day, students read for 2,021 seconds. You get it? 2021. 2,021 seconds, or that's 34 minutes. So, and some of all those activities that maybe don't sound like they're necessarily connected to reading, right? The funny clothes and all that kind of stuff. They often find ways to connect them. There's particularly a lot of Dr. Seuss clothing going on at the elementary school during this month. So it is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of reading that goes on and a lot of celebrating of books. So a good month at the elementary school. Finally, I want to talk about athletics and let you know where things stand with athletics. So the last meeting, the board approved hockey and basketball. So they started their seasons with practices yesterday, except for the girls' hockey team, whose practice had to be canceled because of weather. But so I just want to tell you where things stand. We'll start with hockey. So there's two hockey teams, right? There's a girls' varsity SLP team and a boys' varsity SLP team. I mean that there's still Saranac Lake and Lake Placid combined teams. On top of that, this year, there's no ice in the local area. So the teams are going to be practicing either on dry land, in other words, things like weight training and physical fitness activities, or the Tupper Lake Civic Center, which does have ice, with bus transportation being provided by us for those teams, which is why we didn't have girls practice last night, because the roads were so bad with the weather that we did not send the bus. So dry land will consist of, outdoor physical activity, weight room, or in the gym. And as far as the teams go, the SLP teams are 15 total for girls, but we only have about 3 out of that. So our girls' contribution is very small this year. And then out of the 24 boys on the SLP team, we have about 7 to 8 on that team. So about a third are Lake Placid boys. The games will all be away because we don't have any home ice, but they will be live streamed with games being scheduled as we speak. John Burdick's working very hard to try and make all of this happen. So that's hockey. In basketball, again, 2 teams, a varsity girls team, a varsity boys team. The girls team has about 10 and the boys team has about 12. And these are not combined teams, so they're all Lake Placid boys and girls. The practices are right after school, so one team practices from 2:15 to 4, the other one practices from 4:15 to 6. They alternate so that the boys and girls share the early practice. Right now, the games are being scheduled, again, as we speak, against mostly 5 MVAC schools. Those are the teams in the Mountain Valley Athletic Conference that we typically play, as well as games against Saranac Lake. There will be no fans at games. There'll be no bleachers. The players' chairs will be spaced 6 feet apart in rows and in depth, 2 or 3 rows back. There will only be a skeleton crew of support people at each basketball game allowed in the gym. There won't be any locker rooms. That's for either hockey or basketball, no locker room use. And so players are going to be coming to and leaving games in their uniforms. So those are the 2 sports that just started. As the it's a very short season, so it'll only be 4 weeks long, and we're going to see how it goes. But the kids are excited. In terms of the third aspect of high-risk sports, this is something I know we've mentioned, but it's going to be coming up soon, so I want you to be ready for it. The section has scheduled the Fall 2 season. Again, we're using terms that are brand new this year. Fall 2 is a season set aside for the fall sports that couldn't operate in the fall. So that includes football, which we don't play, although we do have a kid or two who goes to Saranac Lake, and that also includes volleyball. So starting March 29th, granted that is the first day of our spring break, but that's the start of the season. Volleyball is going to be allowed to be then go through the same approval process that the other teams have gone through. So volleyball is going to be allowed under the same conditions that the other high-risk sports have been approved. So just something interesting about volleyball. Volleyball, unlike basketball and hockey, we're not on the high-risk list in the National Federation. So in other states, it's not considered a high-risk sport. In New York, it is. So, and I believe that's because there's really no physical interaction between the 2 teams with volleyball the way there is in basketball and hockey, but there is the sharing of the ball, right? And so that's really where that high-risk piece comes in. What does that mean? Well, that means that it is likely that at the next board meeting, we'll be talking about this at our agenda setting meeting, at the next board meeting, there will be a topic on volleyball. And I would believe that the question before you will be whether or not to approve volleyball during the Fall 2 season. I can see a few possibilities. One is no, another is yes to all 3 volleyball teams. Now you remember, we're only doing varsity basketball, not JV or modified. So volleyball does have 3 levels, modified, JV, and varsity. So it could be yes to all three, or if there was a partial yes, like we did with basketball, it could be yes just for the varsity. I suppose it could be yes for just the varsity and the JV too. That would be up to the board. So that's really kind of what we're looking at with the volleyball season. Any questions about that? Okay. I just wanted to review the athletic situation. It's been obviously a key topic, and I want to let you know where things stand and what we're looking ahead at. As far as the actual spring season, not spring 1 or 2, the spring season. Spring season, we expect to go off. It'll start later than usual, but we would expect that all spring sports would be allowed. Although I do believe that lacrosse will probably have to go through this high risk process again. So that may be the next one after that. So that's everything I have. Any questions or comments from anybody?
Roger, busing for hockey, are we doing all the busing, or is Saranac Lake doing girls? And
The answer is that we are doing all the busing at Saranac Lake because, again, they are requiring, and they've done this with other sports, they are requiring players to get to practice sites on their own. And we are not, matter of fact, we are not allowing players to drive to Tupper Lake. So we're busing. And we do have some of our bus drivers have stepped forward and volunteered to do the driving to the Civic Center. We think we can cover many of the practices that are out there. It is also possible that we may run into some setbacks. Everybody knows that. Like we had yesterday, that wasn't driver related, that was weather related. We will probably be talking more with Saranac Lake about the busing situation. As far as busing to events go, that was still going to be one that we would share.
I do think it's great, Roger, that you were able to come up with some kind of.
any other
thinking
questions?
outside the box for
Colleen?
the athletes?
Sorry, I can't hear it. I'm sorry, Colleen, I missed that.
I just think it's wonderful that you and John Burdick and certainly the coaches thought outside the box, so to say, to allow these athletes at the end of the season to at least recoup some of it. So I do think it's wonderful.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Roger, one comment on the lift up. I think the teacher should have won.
Me too.
Teachers was pretty good, I have to admit. There were some surprises in there.
I thought your part that you did was great. I mean, you were so versatile, just all the different parts that you played. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I was surprised at how much I participated in that lift up. I was also equally shocked to see my wife in the lift up, which was not expected, although I learned later that it was part of a grand plan. So
My wife texted me from work and was like, "You have to watch this right now." She was like,
it was good. Yeah, I was really appreciative of that. It was, as I said to our faculty, it feels sometimes feeling roasted like that, it's a warm feeling. So that's how I took it. So.
Okay, we'll move on to reports to the board. We're already there. Information for the board. There's 2 items. A review of the nominating procedures for the BOCES Board of Education. Time for a commercial message. Anyone willing to replace myself on the BOCES board, certainly entertain that. It's a great experience to get to know BOCES and a good time to transfer out and somebody else in. So if you're interested, let me know. Number 2 is we are being asked as a board to consider a resolution on the executive budget I believe, was the letter in the, I didn't see it in there. The letter, okay. Just the resolution. Okay. BOCES has sent out a letter to each district wishing that they'll sign the letter and it will be sent forward. It'll have a greater impact if the legislatures receive a letter from each district as versus just one from BOCES. So if I could get some opinions on that, because we need to make the decision whether we're going to put it up for a vote next meeting. Is silence a good thing or not here? Yeah.
Sounds like
Does
sounds like a
anybody
good,
have questions?
no. Sounds like a good idea.
I'm okay with it.
Anyone else? So we'll put it on the next agenda and we can vote on it at that time. Thank you. Linking goals with agenda items. Anybody have anything?
Uh, s- Students first and foremost with the Read Across America and the music in our schools, even though music in our school isn't really happening this year, but those should be under, students first and foremost.
I think also students first and foremost, just by the efforts that were made to salvage the end of the winter athletic season for the students.
I think leadership in that we are considering nominating someone to replace the estimable Rick Preston on the BOCES board.
Thank you for stepping up, Martha. If you think of any others, please let Karen know. Thank you. Capital project updates.
Dana? I'm muted. Dana? You have any capital project updates for us?
I was looking at the plaque. I didn't realize it was there. It's been pretty quiet in the last couple of weeks. I think, we did have a meeting today with the attorneys regarding the roofing in Elmer Davis and what to do with that. So trying to get a little more direction and as to how to pursue with closing out that contract as well. I think we met last week with Mosaic and Schoolhouse and talked about basically what's remaining and timelines. And they were pretty confident that most, if not all of it, should be wrapped up and paid by the end of June. That's what they're believing, that most of what's left is really minimal. Even what the roofing company has to do, if they brought a full crew, they thought maybe it would be just a week's worth of work. So little things like that. So that's good news. That's potentially be complete and everything finalized by the end of June, and call it a finished product, and then we can move forward from there. But I guess the big unknown is what will ultimately come out of everything with Elmer Davis, and how ultimately that gets settled. Whether it's just we continue going through the insurance claim process and hold back any money that's left between what the insurance company is able to give us and what the full expenses are, and then we move on from there and hope that there's not any major litigation when it comes to the roofing contractor. Oh, they did tell us the hoods were put on at the loading dock lights.
I noticed those when I came in tonight.
Dana, is there any ongoing damage that's occurring because of the leaks?
No, we had a minor leak a couple weeks ago in the back stairwell. They believe they found what was causing it and fixed it. They actually took ownership in that. Elmer Davis showed up pretty quickly, cleared away some snow, and found out there was some, I think it was like a flashing issue or something, some snow getting behind. So they were able to correct it, and it has not been a leak since. So other than that, really, there hasn't been any issues with the roof thus far. I guess we'll find as the snow melts. One of the areas that they need to correct is this large pooling area on one of the roofs. Well, when it rains hard, it kind of stays there and it's supposed to drain. So that's one of the things that they need to address this spring, or, I don't want to say early summer because, well, summer here really is more like July, and they say it'll be done by the end of June. That's what I have.
Thank you, Dana. Roger.
Thanks,
anything to
Dana.
add, or you have anything to add?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. Dana really covered most of everything. Just we are continuing to consult with our attorneys on the Elmer Davis roofing disagreement, and we will just continue to move forward on that and make the best decisions that we can to protect the district from incurring costs that we did not plan on or deserve based on some of the incidents that happened. So.
Great, thank you. There are no change orders that I saw. So moving on to the discussion phase, you notice that we're joined by Dale Brialt, who is the district superintendent for FEH BOCES. I've asked him to join to go over two different matters tonight. One is the superintendent search, and the other is the BOCES administrative budget, which I've butchered in the past. So I've invited Dale to come to explain that a little bit more eloquently. For those who have not met Dale, here's your chance virtually. So put a face with a name. So Dale, I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, Rick, thank you so much for inviting me to your meeting this evening. I'm looking forward to working with your board on the superintendent search. We are sad to see Roger go. I've really enjoyed getting to know Roger a lot more this year. But I'm also looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better through the search process. So thanks for having me tonight. I started a little over a year ago, last January, as the district superintendent, and I was in the process in January and February of going out and doing some school visits. I had lots of plans to go out and try to meet with boards of education, just to introduce myself and talk a little bit about what I do at the BOCES. And then, as we know, we got a little sidetracked with something called COVID. So it's unfortunate that it took this long for me to meet you, but I'm very happy to be speaking with you this evening. Rick, is there any particular order you'd like me to go in, or do you want me to start with the superintendent search?
Please, if you'd start with the superintendent search, that would be great.
Sure. So, we have some things that I really think we should come to some consensus on this evening with you as a board. I don't know if ultimately you want to go into executive session to discuss that. We can discuss that in a few minutes, but the overall process is that I believe you decided at your last board meeting to employ my services as the district superintendent of the BOCES to facilitate your search. I'm thankful that you gave me the opportunity to do that. That is one of a lot of people don't realize I actually serve a dual role. Not only am I the CEO of the BOCES, which is essentially, running the day-to-day operation and setting the mission and vision for the BOCES services, but part of my salary actually comes from the state education department, and I report directly to the Commissioner of Education in New York State. So that's why I dazzle and delight our superintendents on a monthly basis with updates from the state education department. But I also do report to the commissioner and act as an arm of the commissioner out in the field. And one of the stated job duties of the district superintendent right from the commissioner's office is to ensure that we fill vacancies in our component school districts. And we work with the local boards of education to do our best to fill those vacancies because strong superintendents out in the field lead to a strong instructional program statewide. So I take this responsibility very seriously. So when I say I am excited to consult with you, I really am on multiple levels. Some of the decisions that we need to really, I think we need to try to pin down tonight are an approximate timeline so that we can finalize your advertising brochure. I would like to talk about a little bit about the profile of the superintendent that you're looking for. What are some of the qualities and characteristics you're looking for? And I have some suggestions, not only, I would like to hear from you as a board, but there may be some kind of innovative things we could do to get some feedback from your school community and maybe your larger community. So we'll talk about those things. It would be helpful to establish a maximum salary that you're looking to put in your budget as a board, so that, typically we do include that in any sort of advertisement flyer. Any fringe benefits that you are considering offering, your preferred starting date, which I understand is as close to July 1st as possible. Decisions like whether residency is a preferred or an absolute decision, and also just some kind of mechanics in terms of who would you like me to work with more directly to get the drafts of the vacancy created, the brochure and things like that. So those are some of the things that I'd like to go over tonight. Kind of in a more broad sense, my role is to assist you in any way possible. We'll create a brochure and a set of application materials. We will advertise those far and wide. It's very common for me to send those out to my other 36 colleagues around the state, other district superintendents, and then they subsequently share those out to their component districts. And oftentimes too, when we meet as a group, people may, ask, what's that superintendency like? I got somebody who might be a good fit. So we do try to do some, I don't want to say horse trading, but some solid recommendations to each other, because again, a strong superintendent in Lake Placid makes my job easier. So, it's incumbent upon me to find the best possible fit for you as a board, but also the best fit for the region as well. So I work with my colleagues, but we will blanket the state, using traditional print materials. We can talk about where you would like to advertise, whether it's maybe more locally in North Country newspapers like Plattsburgh, Watertown, or if you'd like to go broader, Albany Times Union, or even, more somewhat nationally in New York Times. I think a school district like Lake Placid, given the historic nature of your community, it's okay to think a little bit more nationally, because you may attract some unique candidates that other districts in our component region may not necessarily attract. So we can talk about that. But we also use platforms like LinkedIn and Monster and things like that, because, we are finding that more and more people are searching those platforms than any of the print materials. So we will advertise far and wide. We'll create any print materials that you would like to put out into the wild. I did, Karen, do I have the ability to share? I should, right? Oh, host is disabled participant sharing. Is there any way you can give me the ability to share? I have a very, very early draft of a advertising brochure that I've been working with Jess Collier on. She's our public information specialist at BOCES. And again, it's a very early draft, but we've been working with Karen. Karen's been providing us with pictures and content from your districts. And Jess has had experience working in the Adirondack region in the past. Oh, here we go. So I just wanted to show you what that very early draft looks like. You should be able to see that. You can see a very striking cover photo advertising the beauty of the Adirondacks and your school district logo. Obviously, this page would be reserved for your candidate profile, and that's what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this evening. We put compensation, application process. By using me as the search consultant, you steer all of the applicants my way. We will use an online application called Frontline for collecting all of the materials electronically. And any questions that any potential candidates have will be referred directly to me. We specifically say to candidates, you shouldn't be reaching out to folks in the district or Board of Education members. All of those should come through me. And if I can't readily answer them, I'll reach out to Roger, Rick, Karen, anyone that I need to reach out to get answers. That timeline, that's not up to date. I did come up with a more up-to-date timeline. You see, we try to incorporate pictures of your district. I love that front facade with the speed skating oval there. That should catch some people's attention. Any potential superintendent candidate, they do want to see data on the school district. So this is very typical. You'll see what a school district budget looks like, student enrollment, staffing, and how many buildings are in the district. So that's pretty standard fare, so people can get a rough idea of the size of the district. And you can see, again, this was just a first crack at drafting something. Jess put your mission statement on there, talking up really the unique nature of the community with its Olympic background. And then again, Karen was fantastic in sharing a bunch of accomplishment sort of information with us. So Jess took a first shot at some things that set Lake Placid apart, like incorporating outdoor sports into a lot of your instructional programming and things like that. And then this back cover page I really love too. Again, it's a different view of your building and talking about some of your Blue Bomber Pride accomplishments. So there's a lot of, we'll take any and all feedback on this. Again, this was just a very early draft. I pressured Jess to get something put together to show you tonight, and I hope you're pleased with the direction that it's heading. But we really want to showcase the district for its unique character and a lot of your accomplishments. You're a very well accomplished school district with your students, and we definitely want to talk about that. So I'll stop sharing that. But that's it in a nutshell. In terms of what we'll do ahead of time. Obviously, I'll review all of the candidates as they come in. It is pretty standard to get a handful of candidates who have no business applying for jobs like this. They don't hold their proper certifications. They just sometimes live in a different world. So I'll try to filter those people out. And I really start the reference process right away as applicants come in. If I try to find out anything I can about candidates. Yes, people will submit letters of reference. They'll submit references that they would like us to call, but I also like to call unlisted references. Hey, what do you know about this person? Give me a little bit of their background, because that's some of the unique information that I think I can add to this process. Then as we move forward, I'll help facilitate your constituent group interviews. I can work with Karen to get all of that organized ahead of time. And, I can do a quick, kind of an orientation with those groups to just remind people what are legitimate questions to ask, what are things that you shouldn't be asking. We always do feel it's important to remind your constituent groups that while the board values and cherishes their opinions and wants their strong feedback in the process, ultimately it is the Board of Education's job, and it's one of your most important jobs, to select and appoint a superintendent of schools, so that you will take any and all of their feedback, but ultimately it is your decision. That's an important thing to remind your interview candidates. I can work with Karen and whoever else you designate ahead of time to establish a pool of questions as well. So that's it. That's the process. We again, this is part of what I do as your BOCES district superintendent. There's no charge for these services other than just the print materials and the cost of the paper and printing and things that we need to do, and as well as any print advertisements that you'd like to put out there. So yeah, that's the process in a nutshell. So I don't know if you have any questions about that, but if not, I just want to talk briefly about, kind of starting to articulate a candidate profile. So I'll pause for a second.
Hey, Dale, I just
Yes.
wanted to mention that Cummings Road has a G on the end. It's Cummings.
Okay, I will make sure that we get that to Jess. Thank you.
Yep.
Like I said, it's a very early draft. I kind of rushed her to get something put together, so my apologies. We'll make sure we get that going. It changed.
Are we limited on the number of pages?
Not at all.
Because
So-
it seems text heavy visually.
Okay, that's excellent feedback too, that I'll make sure I bring back to Jess. No, we're not limited at all. More pages, more pictures.
More space. The photographs you've chosen are beautiful.
Well, thank Karen. She's the one who sent us a bunch of those. Okay, I'll make sure that we take that initial feedback. So a couple things on the candidate profile. I have probably about 30 or 40 of these booklets that I've saved just in my first year. Again, I get them from all over the state. And I perused all of those and picked out probably the most common phrases or anything unique that I thought stood out. And I put a matrix together of what some of those phrases are. So you can just get a feel for what typically is seen in, the superintendent profile materials. So I can, this is kind of just an ugly Excel spreadsheet because it's how I chose. It made sense to organize those in my head. But let me expand this a little bit so it's a little larger. But really, I noticed that they were broken down into three main categories. Minimum qualifications of the candidate. So obviously you have to be hold the school district administrator or school leader certification in order to be a superintendent in New York State. Oftentimes you'll see a minimum of so many years of successful administrative experience, or you may even want to go, into prior superintendent experience. Successful, progressive experience. So successful progressive experience as a teacher, building principal, central office administrator, or superintendent of schools. Prior experience as a chief school officer, central office administrator, building administrator, or other, I did see some unique situations where school districts asked for prior experience specifically in special education, or very specifically that they had to have been a teacher at some point in their career. And oftentimes in terms of make or break qualifications, that's where you'll see residency in the district. Then you'll see a lot of items in the personality or character bucket. So integrity, trust, enthusiastic, compassionate leaders, fostering environments based on mutual respect, value of diversity amongst people, groups, and thought, fairness and respect, open and honest, courageous, out of the box thinking, hands-on, unquestionable character, integrity. So those are the typical things that you'll see in the personality character buckets. And again, I'm using the word typical, but oftentimes you may not want to be typical. You may have things that are very unique to your thoughts around your next leader. But I wanted to just get the creative juices flowing by showing you what we see very often. And then a larger bucket of just individual skills, traits, or experience. So like strong instructional leadership, ability to lead continuous improvement, ability to employ and use technology, effective communicator, team leader, visible through the district and community, experience with organizing teams and developing long-range plans. I don't, need to read every single one of those to you, but that's, those are more of the skill-based traits that we see or experience that is desired. Clear vision for the district, good public relations, and interpersonal skills. So when we take a look at that kind of inside cover of your advertising booklet, this is typically what we find in a preferred, candidate profile. And so, I was hoping to talk a little bit about that this evening, but I do have one idea. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to renew this for next year, but we invested in a tool this year that we've used successfully a few times. You may remember from back in the end of the summer. We now have a tool at our disposal called Thought Exchange. And I think Thought Exchange, although we are, getting someone appointed for July 1st, we're already at a bit of a tight time frame when you start to pace this out. But boy, the thought of using Thought Exchange, and I'm going to share one more thing with you. Let's see here. I think I want to share my internet browser. Yes. We have this tool called Thought Exchange, and you may remember way back in the summer, we put out a Thought Exchange that asked a very open question. What's on your heart? What's on the top of your hearts and minds as we plan for a safe return to school? And what Thought Exchange does is it appears to be very simple at first, because anyone can write anything as a response to that question. So, I can be as straightforward. I'm concerned about the safety of my children, or I could be bizarre and say, if we start school, aliens from Mars are going to attack us. And what's really impressive about Thought Exchange is people can put as many thoughts as they have. But then as other people participate, after they enter their thoughts, they can see thoughts of other people, and they can rate whether they agree with that thought or they disagree with that thought. And what happens is you start to get the thoughts that most people agree with, or most people are concerned about or are in sync with, start to rise to the top. And things that are a little bit off base, or people think are a little bit, out of whack with kind of the majority of thought, start to flow to the bottom. So, you've had public forums before, I'm sure, as school board members, and oftentimes the loudest voice carries the day, but the loudest voice may not always be the voice that oftentimes the silent majority agrees with. And Thought Exchange is a really nice tool for capturing a lot of ideas from people, but also starting to filter the things that have most commonality amongst various constituent groups. So I pulled up the Thought Exchange overview of this very first Thought Exchange we ran at the BOCES back at the end of the summer. And we had 1,288 participants who shared over 1,800 thoughts. And then people rated over 63,000 times. And what we get from a Thought Exchange like this is, you can see things like a word cloud. So again, this was about the start of the school year. And obviously the word quarantine was the word that came up most in everyone's thoughts. But then you can view what are some of the thoughts that received the highest rating in terms of it's on everybody's mind. So what happens when a student or teacher gets sick? And how's that going to be handled? And we now know how a lot of that's handled, but you think back to July and August, a lot of people were very concerned. And, safety of our children and staff is a number one priority. So you can see what rose to the top. And I don't want to take a lot of your time, but there's a lot of reports here. We can break this out by participant groups. So if we want to, we did it by district back then, but we can also do, parents and guardians versus school employees versus students versus community members. So, I mean, we could, there's heat maps here. There's so much data we can gather from this in terms of categories. But we literally tomorrow could give Dr. Catania and Karen a link that you could share with your faculty, with your students, and with your larger community. And we could disaggregate the data in those three different ways: community, staff, and students. Or we could even do it a little bit more. You could say community at large versus parents versus staff and students. And we could get that out tomorrow, and within a week or even just 4 or 5 days, we could gather what people think should be the top characteristics and traits that you should be thinking about when you're hiring the next superintendent of schools for Lake Placid. So I wanted to throw that out there. We have this tool available to us. We invested in it this year, and it's an option for gathering feedback. And it's always a positive thing for a Board of Education to say, hey, we cast a net far and wide to gather as much feedback as possible from our staff, from our students, from our larger community. So I wanted to throw that out there. Other district superintendents have used this successfully, not only for these initial stages, but we could actually use it down the road for gathering feedback from your interview committees, things like that. So it's a tool that we have at our disposal should you choose to use it. So I've been doing an awful lot of talking, but if you want to give me your thoughts on the potential of using Thought Exchange, but also about your candidate profile and some of the things that are at the top of your mind, I think we should have that discussion.
Brian here. I've got a question on the Thought Exchange. Would you recommend that we immediately use it as part of building our candidate profile and actually building the pamphlet?
Well, that's what I was going to suggest is we could put that out tomorrow.
Yeah.
And run it for about a week. And my goal is to have the brochure completed, or at least in pretty final draft form by your next board meeting in 2 weeks, so that we can put it out by the end of that week and get it out advertised. So if we run a Thought Exchange for a week, we could send to all of you as a board, or I could work through Rick or Karen to say, here are some of the top thoughts that came up. And then if you want to designate somebody that I can work with to generate the profile from there, we could do that. And then you can say with a good conscience, we've reached out as far as wide as possible to get feedback on this.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think we should use it immediately. The other question too I had was, in your role as an agent of the commissioner, can you, is it possible for you to do searches if we have candidates that have been in New York State, either as principals or other administrators? Can you see if they've got a history, either being involved, as a complaint against them with the commissioner, or being involved in, just any petition that may have been filed with the commissioner? Almost like a background check. Almost like a background check, but just through, understand?
Yeah, typically that's where I'd reach out to my colleagues who are DSs in other parts of the state, and we all know that what goes around comes around, so we're very honest with each other because we try not to sell each other a bill of goods, and that's exactly where I would go as my DS colleagues and say, are there any skeletons in the closet about this candidate from your region? And
I would hate to go through this and use your services. It seems like a low hanging fruit, but could really bite us if find the thing as candidate we think is great, et cetera, and then it turns out that they've got a history with the commissioner.
No, that's relatively easy information for me to find out, and and we use Google. Google search,
sure, but in addition to the actual, I believe there's a way to do it, to search on it, because I filed my own complaints for clients. So that was it. Thanks. Yep. Thank you for your efforts to date.
Oh, my pleasure.
Consensus is to move forward with the tool, Dale, from what we're reading. Anybody have any additional thoughts or conflicting positive or conflicting thoughts, I guess. That's what I'm. As long as that timeline works as well.
Well, that's the last thing before we talk about salary or anything else. I do want to, let's see, I've got all sorts of documents open here. Going to make sure I have the right one. I updated the timeline. Let's see this document here. So this is the document that I gave to Rick for your last board meeting. There was a draft timeline in there. I did update it because you have, and by the way, I've got to say this. Rick made my job very easy. All of the work that he did ahead of time to have the matrix of the different phases that are anticipated, and the interview teams structure that he put together, it makes my life easy because oftentimes that's what a lot of school districts rely on me to talk them through. So it sounds like you have that pretty well hashed out. So knowing that you want to jump right into a large first round committee and then go right into a subsequent second round committee for final recommendations for the board, I think we can accelerate the process a bit. So here we are, March 2nd. We're talking about the characteristics and leadership profile, as well as some additional content. We hope by the 16th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, to have the vacancy announcement finalized. So in between, we'll do the thought exchange, and we will solidify a draft of the vacancy announcement, and we'll send that out the end of that week. We'll start getting that out to the field. We'll give that about a month to percolate out in the field. And in the meantime, I can meet with you to talk about potential contractual outlines, talk about some of the things that we're seeing in up-to-date superintendent's contracts. So we could meet potentially at your April 14th board meeting to discuss some of those things. And April 14th deadline is also, that's a April 6th meeting, although that may be a spring break time for you, right, Karen? So it would be the April 20th meeting. But, we can have some discussions in between there. All candidate applications would be due to, me by April 14th. And I would, all through the time we put the materials out into the field until April 14th, I'll answer any calls that any potential candidates may have. I'll start some initial reference checking, some, like the questions you just had to see if there's any commissioner type skeletons in the closet. We'll go through there. And then based on the fact that you have 2 interview groups, I accelerated things from there. So we, your April 20th meeting right after spring break, I can bring to you all of the candidates who have applied. We can filter out any of the people who have no business being there. Usually what I'll do is I'll prepare a report for you. I'll have all of the materials that each candidate submits, but usually I try to do a 1-page synopsis of each candidate. And then if you want to look further, you can. But I'll submit all of the candidates to you just so that if we need to narrow it down to a manageable number of candidates, we'll do that there. And then I was thinking, hey, maybe even as quickly as the next week, we could plan for doing that first round of interviews with interview group 1, the subsequent week, interview group 2. And then by mid to end of May, try to work out making an offer to somebody, finalizing a contract, because Karen did tell me you're hoping to appoint somebody at your June 1st board meeting. And then from there, depending on whether someone has a 30, 60, 90-day separation clause, they would start as soon or July 1st or as soon thereafter after that. So that's the timeline I came up with. Just wanted your feedback on that, if that seems reasonable.
It seems ambitious, but doable with all of our help.
Yeah, it is ambitious. But I think it's doable.
Well, I think we have to make it doable. So
I think as soon as you can get the groups articulated, by the end of this month, early April, so that those folks can set some time aside. And as we, between now and the 16th, when we finalize the brochure, we're going to want to lock in the dates of those first and second round interviews and set that time aside. That way the candidates know right up front, you need to make yourself available. Some of the candidates are going to, a trend that we see a lot now are first round with board only, and then they move people into constituent groups. We're skipping over that process completely. So that does allow us to be ambitious and to accelerate this.
Do we know if we're going to do any of the interviews in person or Zoom?
That's really your preference at this point. You could do first round via Zoom, although by end of April, most people who are in the educational business have been vaccinated at this point. There probably are some safe ways to have in-person interviews by that point, but that's really your prerogative as the board.
I would like to see the final round be in person, but in the first round be Zoom. I think ultimately we've got to see them in the flesh.
I would agree.
Who foots the cost for travel and lodging?
Typically, most of the districts up here in the North Country, that's just on the candidate. That was in my packet that I sent to you. Do you want to consider offering a small stipend for travel for your finalists? You're more than welcome to put that up there, and that's something we can discuss later. So if this timeline looks good, we'll keep it this way for now. And between now and the 16th, we should think about specific dates during those weeks of the end of April, early May. And Karen, maybe you can look at your district calendar and recommend some dates that tend to be better days of the week than others in terms of activity in the building.
I'll do that, Dan.
Excellent, thank you. So with that said, I don't know if you want to save a little brief executive session for later to discuss salary range and some other benefit items that we probably should discuss in executive session. If you want, I can talk about BOCES admin budget and now, and then we can move to that at the end. Does that make sense, Rick?
That was the plan, yes.
Excellent. So BOCES admin budget, you want me to just give kind of an overview of what it is and why it exists and what it encompasses? Do you think that'd be best, Rick?
Helpful.
Okay, sure. So, back in the 1940s, the legislation was passed to create the boards of cooperative educational services. And there was a process whereby school districts in specific regions in the state could get together and form their own cooperatives. I recently actually did a little bit of a project on this for something that came up in another district. And, for many years, our BOCES were the districts of what we now know as Brush-and-Moira and St. Regis Falls. And it wasn't until the early 70s that the 10-component district that BOCES that we now know of really came together. There was a consolidation of two smaller BOCES, which added the Lake, what we now know as the Lake Placid Central School District, as well as Long Lake and Racket Lake. But in the legislation that creates the cooperatives, there's 37 of them across the state. School districts enter into these cooperatives and decide that it's in the best interest to have a cooperative to try to create and offer services that would be very difficult, if not impossible, to offer individually in school districts. You know, probably one of the best examples and the most longstanding example is career and technical education. It really would be hard for individual school districts to run viable auto tech, environmental science programs, things like nursing and cosmetology, like we're able to do with the BOCES. So part of that legislation does say that there is one component of the BOCES budget that school boards must vote on annually, and that's the administrative budget. And a lot of boards may say, well, why do we only get to vote on that? Why don't we get to vote on the whole budget? Well, technically you do. Any of our programmatic offerings or our support services offerings, you get to vote with your feet, to borrow an expression, which is if you decide that the CTE Center does not offer programs that benefit your students, you choose not to participate, and by not participating, that essentially is your vote on programmatic budgets, because a BOCES operates on a zero-based budget. We start at year zero every single year, and we hope that you sign up for a certain level of services so we can keep all of our employees employed. But if you don't sign up, then we reduce our budget accordingly and we lay off people accordingly. But that also affects your neighboring school districts, because the less that you participate, the more that they have to cover if they want to stay in the services. The administrative budget, on the other hand, is the one area where component boards get to vote on, because that is considered to be the central operating budget of maintaining the cooperative. And actually, I thought it might be beneficial for me to pull up last year's administrative budget presentation that I did at our annual meeting, because I think this articulates it better than what I can say here this evening. So, you know, the administrative budget is all of the costs associated with the coordination of the organization-wide BOCES support functions, and such as human resources, payroll, benefits, accounting and billing, and the leadership to support those activities. So when you take a look at the BOCES budget, the local share of my salary is there. The state share comes directly from the state education department, because I lead. You know, I am the leader of the organization, so I'm responsible for making sure that all of the program services operate appropriately. And we also have pieces of our 2 assistant superintendents in there, Lori Torville, who oversees all of our instructional programming. And not only that, but she also runs elementary principals meetings on a monthly basis, high school principals meetings, and she assists me in that kind of the state education arm of my job, in making sure that all of your principals are well aware of state initiatives and can assist them in their roles. Stacy Vincent, their assistant superintendent for business and operations, works with your business officials, your buildings and grounds heads to get information out to them as well. And then we have our payroll and benefit services. So we do have our FEH Health Insurance Consortium, which is really done significantly better than a lot of our surrounding consortiums in the last past several years. So the BOCES coordinates those activities, and all of this costs associated with that are there in the administrative budget. And if you look at how it's broken down, and again, these are last year's numbers, but you can see employee, just like your administrative costs and your local school district budgets, employee benefits are the things that kill us. And those are the costs that keep going up, particularly in a BOCES. And this is really important to understand. Let's see. Yeah, because it's right here. Retiree health insurance. The comptroller came out several years ago and said that all BOCES should have all of their retirees in the administrative budget, because those are costs that should be shared by all of the districts once they enter into retirement. Currently, we only have about 67% of our retiree costs in our administrative budget. The other 33% is still scattered throughout our various program budgets. But, you know, there's anyone who has ever retired from the BOCES, as you know, based on your district budgets, we still have to pay their share of health insurance or you know, supplement their Medicare premium. And, you know, back in 2009-10, there were only 97 retirees in our BOCES, and last year we were up to 145 retirees. So that's why, employee benefits account for, in total, 52% of our overall administrative budget, because, we have my salary in there with my health insurance and retirement benefits, as well as all of those retirees. So you can see benefits for active employees are only 12% of the administrative budget, 52% are the retiree health insurance benefits, and only less than $1 million on a 30-something million dollar budget are actually operational expenses. So that's we're stuck with those costs, whether we like them or not. So oftentimes I get the question, well, why is that administrative budget 4, 5, 6% increase this year when we have to keep everything to 2%? And I would say, well, take a look at your individual line items for some of these things, like retiree health insurance, like your regular employee benefits. If you took those individual line items, oftentimes those are in the 3, 4, 5, 6% range. And think of the BOCES administrative budget as a individual line item. It really is only a certain segment of our budget, much of which is uncontrolled costs associated with employee benefits. So, and again, this is something I put together last year. You can see the retiree share of our administrative budget. You can see it's growing pretty substantially. Back in 9-10, it was only 13.7% of our overall administrative budget. Now it's over 50% of the administrative budget. It's a challenge that not only FEH BOCES has. Every single BOCES if you took a look at all of their administrative budgets, they're all going to look very similar. A couple highlights for this year's administrative budget that we'll be presenting. Over the years, most of our component districts have stopped using BOCES for special education services, but we made the mistake of leaving our assistant superintendent for instruction in the special ed COSER. Well, we discovered, when I came on board, one of the things that troubled me was over 41% of my assistant superintendent's budget was allocated to one special education program in Chateauguay. It's one of our only remaining special education classroom. And now that program is aidable through what's called the STAC process. So the district gets a lot of that aid back, but I couldn't in good conscience leave that there any longer. So we will have a larger than usual increase in our salaries attributed to our administrative budget this year, because I do think Lori provides a valuable service to all of our component districts, not only in her oversight of our instructional programs, but again, like I said, her instructional leadership regionally, in terms of planning professional development, working with your principals. And I just couldn't in good conscience leave her in that one special ed program anymore. So we have moved a portion of her salary over to the administrative budget. We have other things like, again, we have all those retiree health insurance benefits. And even though our consortium just voted on a 2% increase, we have historically underfunded the retiree side of it. So, and Dana will know this because he sits on that. The retiree increases are actually going to go up 5%, the premium there. So we have a ton of retirees in our administrative budget. So that's more of a hit on our administrative budget than it is in our program budgets. We're losing some revenue on the administrative side this year because we are the custodian of a lot of cash at our BOCES, especially with the health insurance consortium. But the return on those we invest those funds into short and medium term investments. The return on those investments is going down. So we're anticipating less revenue this year, which will impact our administrative budget this year. And we did add for the first time an $8,000 interest charge on revenue anticipation notes because we do have a bit of a history in our BOCES of letting our districts pay their bill kind of whenever they get around to it. And sometimes it's to help districts with local cash flow issues. But I've had several awkward conversations with other BOCES this year because our districts will cross contract with other BOCES and I'm not paying their bill on time because our districts aren't necessarily paying our bill on time. And I really, in good conscience, can't allow that to continue. So I told my business official to plan for a revenue anticipation note this year just in case we need it so that we can pay our bills on time to other BOCES. I want to stay in their good graces, so they'll continue to give me honest references on things like superintendent candidates. So, that's maybe way more information than you wanted to hear on the administrative budget, but that's really the long and short of it. Things like fuel for the BOCES come out of there, our attorney fees, we have those just like you do. And little pieces of other salaries like the central, my assistant who also acts as the BOCES board clerk, things like that, a little bit of HR, a little bit of our PR that we're spinning up, all of those expenses are in there. So that's hopefully, Rick, maybe that's too much of an explanation of the administrative budget, but that's essentially what encompasses that admin budget.
That's very comprehensive. Thank you.
And I do
Questions
hope
for Dale on the administrative budget.
Oh yeah, go ahead. And I just wanted to point out one other thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I did give to Rick at our BOCES board meeting, and I'm going to made sure all of our superintendents and business officials have this document that we created. It's the BOCES aid report, because I'm embarrassed to admit this, and maybe I shouldn't admit it, but I was the superintendent / business official at Chateauguay for 5 years prior to going to Cap Region BOCES for a while. And when I was that business official at Chateauguay, I'm embarrassed to say that I had almost no understanding of how BOCES aid worked. I took the figure that I got in my state aid runs every single year, and I just went with it. And luckily that always worked out in my favor, because that was usually less than what I actually received. But I've kind of made it my mission this year to educate as many of our school folks as possible about BOCES aid, because, even with a district like Lake Placid, where you probably know that we get the least out of anybody in the state, we're at the floor of BOCES aid. Well, it's still 36% on a lot of services. And it's, now that's a broad overstatement. And it's not always 36%, because there's nuances there. There's deductions that have to be taken on salaries and some other things. But I still think it's important that you make yourself aware of this as a board, because I don't know about you, but if I had a free coupon that gave me 30 cents on every dollar that I spent in certain places or organizations, I still would give it some serious consideration if I was trying to pinch pennies or to save some money. And I'm worried about a couple things as a new district superintendent, because I was a school superintendent in the last economic recession, and our BOCES was cut in half in terms of our staffing. And a cooperative only works if people continue to contribute to the cooperative, because one of my colleagues gave me this analogy. The tendency is to circle the wagons in economic downturns. And with a BOCES, you don't want to circle the wagons and all start shooting at each other on the inside. And if people start really kind of pulling back from BOCES services, it can be very harmful to the idea of a cooperative. So I ask you to consider that. And in this BOCES output report, you can see that your district spent almost $1.2 million, but you received revenue back, and this is revenue in the following year, of $350,000 plus, and this is the important thing, and I should have mentioned this in the administrative budget. Again, we are a zero-based budget at BOCES, and we don't have certain reserve categories like you do. For example, fund balance does not exist at a BOCES. So anything that we do not spend at the end of any given year goes back to all of our component districts in the form of a surplus refund. So not only did you generate $350,000 of BOCES aid on that $1.2 million, but you also received almost $80,000 in surplus refund. And this is based on the 1920 year into 2021. You received that almost $80,000 in surplus refund. So your total net expenses, if you add all of that together, $766,000 on $1.2 million worth of spending. So, I would argue that investing in BOCES during economic downturn is a serious consideration, because as long as the governor leaves the expense-driven aid categories alone, which he's proposing to eliminate those, you can actually generate additional revenue for your school district if you're if you're strategic about how you invest in BOCES services moving forward. So that's, again, I don't want to sound like a used car salesman here. My paycheck doesn't change whether you participate or not, unless no one participates, then I might not have a job. But the strength of the cooperative depends on people really investing in the BOCES. And so that's why I wanted to do a little bit of education this year on how BOCES aid works. And they're real numbers. And Dana can tell you this, they're actually some of the only numbers you can predict with pretty good accuracy. This and transportation and a few of the other expense-driven categories. So again, Rick, maybe a lot more than you wanted to hear, but you gave me the platform. I'm going to take advantage of it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Any questions for Dale? Great. We've got a couple more items here, Dale, and then we'll go into executive session. So if you don't.
No, I'll just mute and I'll wait my turn.
Next up under discussion is budget vote. Karen, was that a?
I was talking about voting machines or something.
Oh,
I
yes.
will update you that after the county told us they were not able to use their machines, Dana made a phone call down there and talked to them, and they've agreed to let us use machines this year. And Warren County is buying new machines, and they're going to give their machines to Essex County. And Essex County then is going to give 2 machines to our district that are going to be our machines. So
That's fantastic news.
that
That
is
is fantastic news.
Yes.
I know how much you like to hand count votes, but
I do expect though that
We're going to probably get a large number of absentee ballot requests.
it's good news. Thank you. Minutes for the Board of Education, that's under consent. Next section is personnel, winter coach amendment, and that is also a consent item. Additional action items are the Read Across America proclamation. The recommended action is approve the National Education Association's Read Across America proclamation for March 2021 as per the attached. And I'd like to read that just to recognize the Read Across America proclamation. Whereas the School Board of Lake Placid Central Schools stands firmly committed to promoting reading as a catalyst for our students' future academic success, their preparation for America's jobs of the future, and their ability to compete in a global economy. And whereas Lake Placid Central Schools has provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education of our youth, grounded in the principle that educational investment is key to the community's well-being and long-term quality of life. And whereas National Education Association Read Across America, a national celebration of reading in March 2021, promotes reading and adult involvement in the education of our community's students. Therefore, be it resolved that the School Board of the Lake Placid Central Schools calls on the citizens of Lake Placid and Wilmington to assure that every student is in a safe place reading together with a caring adult every day. And be it therefore resolved that the body enthusiastically endorses National Education Association's Read Across America and recommits our community to engage in programs and activities to make America's children the best readers in the world. May I have a motion to accept this proclamation, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Colleen. A second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joan. I'm sorry? Any further discussion?
I just want to say, Rick, just
If
to,
not, please vote. Whoops.
I just
Colleen.
wanted to say, Rick, just to reiterate what Roger outlined earlier, that there's a variety of wonderful opportunities and activities that they've got planned during the month of March for the children. And it's just I know that Laura Coffin spearheads this, but it's just, it's wonderful to see all the activities.
Yes. Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask you to vote.
Yes.
Exactly, I'm saying yes.
Yeah.
Seven yes.
Okay, 7 yes, no opposition, so the proposition passes. The next is another proposition. Recommended action is approve the Music in Our Schools month for the month of March 2021 as per the attached, which reads, whereas music is a universal language that connects people through its ability to move and inspire us, one of the most compelling means of artistic expression by human beings, music has the capability to stir emotions and feelings through the medium of sound and its creation, structure, and performance. And whereas the study of music is a core educational component and required subject to New York State learning standards, which encourages students to create, perform, participate, and learn about music. And whereas in an important part of the school's art program, music education not only benefits students by engaging them in the creative and critical process, but can help them tap and develop in their own potential, skills, knowledge, and lifelong appreciation of music. Whereas music education is recognized as part of the well-rounded sequential curriculum that develops artistic and 21st century skills beneficial to students, and whereas 2021 marks the 48th year of celebration of Music in Our Schools month. Now, therefore, we, the trustees of the Lake Placid Central School District Board of Education, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as Music in Our Schools month. May I have a motion to accept this proclamation, please?
So moved.
Daniel first.
I'll
and,
second it.
Martha second. Thank you. Any discussion? If not, I'll ask you to vote, please.
I'm a yes.
He makes that quick visual appearance. Okay. She doesn't seem to be there right now. So.
She doesn't?
No. She must have stepped out.
You want me to turn that doesn't up?
Sure.
Okay. 6 yes.
So we have 6 yes and no opposition, so the proclamation passes. The next action item is a bus lease proposition resolution. Recommended action is be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the following proposition to be added to the ballot of the May 18th, 2021 budget vote. Resolved, shall the trustees of the Lake Placid Central School District be authorized to lease 3 66-passenger school buses for a period not to exceed 5 years at the cost not to exceed $58,500 per year. May I have a motion for the bus proposition?
Yes.
Thank you, Colleen, and second, Dan. Any discussion? We rotate these out annually, correct, Dana?
Yeah, usually 3.
And why don't we purchase them?
Someone smarter than me years ago decided to go with the lease as opposed to purchasing.
My stepdad was the superintendent of Scroon Lake, and he used to. I don't even know if that's allowed anymore, but he used to be able to. He would buy them, and then was able to sell them, and because there was a difference in the, there was a difference. He was actually able to profit from the sale. But I'm sure someone smarter than me has decided to go with the lease. So, but I was just curious. I wanted to make a comment as to why, and then share the, is there another creative way to deal with the busing? That was it.
Well, yeah, you can still purchase. Yes, you can do
Yeah.
either way. You can purchase or lease.
Yeah.
We look at it as if you purchase, you can then put in for transportation aid that we would get, or if you lease, we can use the amount that we pay each year in the leases, and we can use that as part of our exclusion for the cap tax. So some schools purchase, some schools lease.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, I'll ask for a vote.
Yes.
7 yes.
7 yes, no opposition, so the proposition on the bus passes. Special education is under consent, save for any questions that members may have of the March 16th packet that was presented. Any questions on that packet? If not, we'll go to the cause. Second, go to the cause. No, there's nothing. Thank you. Okay, excuse me, the adjournment phase, next meetings are listed for you. March 16th. We will begin again at 6 o'clock with a budget work session, and then our regular board meeting immediately following.
So we need to have executive session also.
Okay, that's tenure recommendation. How many do we have? 3. Okay, so
Want to do that at 6 and then do the budget work session?
why don't we do that? Is that sound acceptable, Dan? Yeah. So we'll have just so everyone's straight, we'll open the meeting at 6 o'clock. We'll go right into executive session for additional tenure recommendations, and then go right from there to the budget workshop and then to the regular meeting. And you can see the rest of the meetings, April 6th, 20th. April 6th is the questionable date. We can discuss that at next meeting and see if we want to move that because of spring break. Any old topic agenda items? How about new items? If not, I will propose an executive session subject to the board approval. Recommended action is motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing details regarding the upcoming superintendent search. May I have a motion to enter executive session? Thank you, Daniel. Second?
Yes.
Pick one.
Huh?
Pick one.
Did you get both?
I got Daniel and Dan.
Okay. All in favor? All right.
Aye.
7 yeses, 0 no's. So we will enter executive session at 8:13 p.m.